Let's see. Oh, we're live. I was just saying I'm a bit tired today, but I always feel energized when I see Misan. You give me life. You don't stop. This guy never says, no, it's too late. I'm too tired. I'm too busy. You're built different. So we haven't actually spoken because I was away filming last week. You've been super busy. We haven't actually spoken since the war in Iran started. I don't think we have actually spoken. In a way, I'm relieved because I just don't know how I would have been coherent through the rage and fury I felt when this started. But I'd
I
like
mean,
to say that my
listen
thoughts
to
have
your
become more
words.
coherent and calm in the meantime, but it's just getting worse.
Can you imagine that you're saying such words? I haven't spoken since the war started. It's just
I should
oh,
actually say the latest war because we seem to be in the era of completely unhinged war, which primarily causes misery and death for civilians and holds no one accountable.
mm.
And it's just the lesson of the past few years has been you can just start a war. If you're Israel or you're Trump, you can just start a war. And who's going to stop you, frankly?
I, we kind of knew it was coming, but no one saw it in quite this manner, and then the response from Iran has been really, really interesting. It's there has been a build-up from Iran protests, Iranian diaspora wanting to be rid of the IRGC and the regime. But you and I have spoken about exchanging one devil for another. And I've never heard of Israel and the US being benevolent in their bomb dropping for anyone. And what's happened, and even in the first 2 days, 170 odd schoolgirls were murdered in cold blood. It's since pretty much 99% sure that came from a Tomahawk missile, which means it was a US bomb. So within day two, babies, bless you, babies were being murdered again. And I just said, here we go. Here we go. And what's happened since is, I have family that live in the GCC. The strategy of attacking the global economy, from pretty much blocking the Straits of Hormuz, attacking this is from Iran's point of view, attacking infrastructure is really interesting because gas prices are beginning to go up in the US, and even the MAGA crew are like, this ain't it. There doesn't seem to be a clear strategy from the US. I'm pretty sure what Israel wants, but the US is powering this. And many of my friends that are in the military have said that Iran is pretty much geographically a perfect fortress. It's got mountains pretty much all around it. Its topography is impossible to navigate at the scale that would be needed for a ground invasion. It's got untold military assets that are hidden from view and cannot be bombed. It's doing an asymmetric sort of warfare, which is not missile for missile, but very cheap drones, of which the US Patriot and other systems cost, $1 million to 5 million, and multiple are used sometimes to take down a 30 to 50 grand drone. And, the math ain't mathing for the US, even if you look at it in that way. But more importantly, Iran have sent weapons to the GCC, but they purposely haven't fully destroyed infrastructure, which, if you look at the pipelines that are in miles and miles of desert, they can do, one drone can do the kind of damage that will be very, very hard to repair from an LNG pipeline or a crude oil pipeline, or the pipelines that are moving oil. So you tell me what the strategy is. The world is in turmoil, and I don't see this ending anytime soon. But Iran, the threat is existential for Iran. So it has been thinking and waiting for this moment. And also the GCC needs to ask itself, I think, quite a lot of questions, because the brand of the GCC as a safe haven for all sorts of reasons is getting harder and harder. Even today, there was another drone that hit the airport in Dubai. So look at where we are.
Let's come to the GCC, the Gulf, the UAE. But we've got a question here from Royston who's saying, I'm finding the conspiracy around Netanyahu's death interesting. Wonder if it's real. So, over the last couple of days, there have been reports that Netanyahu, who was really the force behind this US Israel war on Iran, there were reports that he was dead. I suspect it might have been wishful thinking. What do you think, Miss Anne? Do you think that, I mean, there was a video today I saw, he's been going around coffee shops showing off the fact that he's alive and that he
Well,
has 10 fingers, which, as we all know, AI struggles to replicate. I think, though, that
but that video, Afua, is pretty ropey. And
it's
BBC
ropey.
verified.
And I would say that I don't recall seeing anything quite like this from Israel before. It does suggest that they're spooked. I mean, to come out and have to prove that you're alive in this kind of faux jubilation that you're alive, it's a pretty low bar.
Mm-hmm.
Netanyahu is alive. It's not we're winning this war and this is working out great for us. And, Israel's agenda is one thing, the US agenda is another thing. But this is why, back to your earlier point, one of the things that's been interesting to observe about this is the way it's fracturing the right. It's fracturing the right everywhere. So we've got people like Meloni in Italy, who has been a staunch ally of Trump, basically, Italy's far right leader, one of the most vocal condemning this horrific massacre on this elementary school that killed, was it 175, 180 civilians, most of them children, in Iran. So people who you would think would be more restrained in condemning a MAGA-led war have been quite outspoken. And then, of course, there's the Tucker Carlson of it, the Candace um,
Owen.
Owens of
Yep.
it, who, again, we've talked about this before, this dystopian world where the people who are your craziest allies of white supremacy are actually the ones making sense, because they, knowing MAGA from the inside as they do, are disillusioned because they seem to have believed Trump when he said he was getting elected to stop wars.
Yeah.
And, none of us took that seriously. But I guess if you were a supporter who bought into that rhetoric, then this might feel like a bit of a betrayal.
Mm.
So, and in the UK, it's been interesting to see Kemi Badenoch, for example, have to try and retract her earlier criticism that the UK didn't join this war. She's now saying, no, I never said that we should join. To even see the hawkish Tories be very slow to say that it would have been a good idea for the US to stand with Trump is pretty unusual.
Yep.
Usually they want to stand with Trump. They want to use it to weaponize it against Labour. And it's, I don't want to say this is something Keir Starmer's done right, because to say he's done something right feels like too strong praise for me. And, if you look at Spain's leader, that's doing it right, to get
Oh,
up on the
wow.
world stage and say, this is illegal. It's a violation of international law. It is not how states should conduct themselves. We want no part in it. We condemn it in unequivocal terms. Unfortunately, we don't have a leader who has the backbone to say that in this country, but we also have not joined in. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, a good thing. I say we haven't joined in. We haven't not joined in, but we haven't joined in. We've done the ambiguous thing of not doing the right thing, but not doing the wrong thing, which seems to be about the most you could expect from the UK at the moment, frankly.
Yes, and history will remember, especially in the first week of this war, who were the warmongers, from people like Nick Ferrari and Ian Dale and LBC, to Mehdi Hassan having many arguments with Omid Jali, it's just been crazy watching them go at it. To Owen Jones, I'm just going to play this clip. Hopefully the audio will work. Give me 1 second. Where Clive Myrie, who, of course, we know in the black community, and this is how he reported. And Owen Jones did respond to this. Let's see if this works.
Countries have been drawn into this conflict as Israel and America seek to transform it. This is just astonishing. Outrageous.
Let me just repeat that.
More and more countries have been drawn into this conflict as Israel and America seek to transform Iran. This is just
Israel and America seek to transform Iran. That's a well-regarded BBC voice on the BBC using that language. They seek to language matters. They seek to they don't talk about the illegality of sovereign states bombing others. They don't talk about anything. They seek to transform. And Uncle Clive, I don't know you, but I grew up watching you. Nothing is worth this. If you see that script, just walk away. It's nothing is worth this. The other thing that we have to mention is um, Israel as a rogue state is, as far as I'm concerned, committing another Nakba in the south of Lebanon, where 800,000 people are, they have been literally pushed out of their livelihoods and homes, and it is not being reported in the way that it should be.
It's just war crime upon war crime at this point. And it's true that the language is creeping into the media. I mean, obviously, there's been rightly so much scrutiny of the media's vocabulary around Gaza, the hypocrisy of how Israeli life is described versus Palestinian life, or language you would never see used to describe people in Europe or America, used to casually talk about the murder of people in Palestine and now Lebanon. But this conflict has taken that to another level where we're seeing the way in which this war is exactly as you described, being casually talked about as an attempt to transform, as bringing in change. I had a discussion today with somebody who was talking about change in Iran, and this is not change. This is an illegal war. And again, I hope that we can be sophisticated enough to separate a legitimate critique of the Iranian regime from the complete illegality and anarchy of simply invading and attempting, by mainly killing civilians and creating decades of environmental and logistical catastrophe, by pursuing one or two nations' interests in a country, whether or not it has any good outcome for the population. And this is the thing that is just hard to understand, where the Iranian diaspora who is celebrating this war are coming from, not to in any way minimize their grievance with the regime, but as I've said before, give me one example where the US, careering into a country with a plan it can't even define, even amongst its inner circle, cannot offer a coherent reason for this war or a coherent explanation as what a good outcome would look like, what the objective is. How could that possibly lead to something that is in the long term in the interest of the people of Iran? And process matters. And, we're seeing this now, ironically. Trump is, as we record this, raging that nobody wants to now form an international coalition with him of policing the Straits of Hormuz. Now, suddenly he seems to have discovered international cooperation. He should have thought about that before he went about starting wars without any legality, threatening to invade and seize territory from some of his NATO allies like Denmark. Denmark was one of the first countries to join with the US in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, illegal as those also were. They're not jumping to support a president now who has threatened to violate their sovereignty. And this is where it backfires. This behavior that has zero respect for the basic rules of diplomacy or international cooperation means when you need that cooperation, guess what? It's crickets. No one wants to join in. And, it's just so basic, Misan, that America would start a war in this way and then be angry that others don't want to come to its support. Why would they? What's the motive?
Well, the Epstein files is also, there's more information coming out. I'm even scared to repeat the latest unredacted thing that was said about the president of America. You should read it yourself, but it is deeply, deeply disturbing. And then if you look at what Israel's doing in the occupied Palestinian territories, yesterday, a family of 5, unbelievable assassination at close range by IDF forces, where 2 of the children were killed, age 5, age 7. Mother and father were killed, and the 2 boys are all over social media. And I feel terrible that people are even putting cameras to their faces, but they're talking that they survived. And this should be everywhere. It should be headline news. This is not in Gaza. And I think Israel, at this point, anyone that's saying that this nation state is anything but a rogue state needs serious help. We're seeing corners of right-wing media. The pro-Israel corners of right-wing UK media are still saying, and there's this racist sort of, if you don't believe in this illegal war, then you're siding with the mullahs. I'm like, what? The mullahs? It's just so racist. Like, Iran is 90 million people, and to say that anyone that doesn't want Israel and the US to bomb the hell out of it is siding with the Islamic Republic regime it's just such a ridiculous take. And to have Charles Moore of the Telegraph do an article, what, a week ago, saying that Bibi Netanyahu is a great wartime leader of our time, to have the corner of X that I'm talking about, they are all gung-ho pro this war. And there will be a ledger, it's so important, of everyone that is screaming for this thing to continue, because it's going to be Iranian children. And I don't know about you, but one child is too many. They are all people's universe. And then the bot army would come in. So if we cut this up and post it afterwards, I guarantee you we have a whole bunch of bots saying, where were you when 40,000 people were processing? But I was posting about it.
And so was I.
So it doesn't really work. But I don't think they're humans. I think it's part of a Hasbara program that is very, very effective if you don't understand social media, to try and normalize this madness.
They're not bots, but there are some Israelis who regularly message me, and before this war started, were constantly saying to me, "You're so outraged about Gaza. Where's your outrage about Iran?" And it's such a weird thing to say. First of all, I hate persecution and injustice everywhere. So unlike them, who only selectively seem to care about things that align with their worldview, when people are being persecuted, that when there was a rapper in Iran recently who was sentenced to death for his critique of the regime, we posted, Misan, you joined that action. We mobilize. We do that when we see people being faced with losing their lives because they are speaking, they are standing up for their freedom. And it's consistently applying these values to all humanity that ends you up in the position we are of having to talk about the complete inhumanity and illegality of military actions like this one. And I think that, the sad truth is that it's not just a matter of principle. If America was smart enough to act in its actual self-interest, it also wouldn't do this. It's not going to end well for the US. And that, again, would have been foreseeable to anyone other than these maniacs running foreign and defense policy in the US right now. I mean, if you just listen to some of their rhetoric, it's truly dystopian. And, you add in the media climate in the US, where the reality is that one right-wing billionaire, David Ellison, and his family are now in control of a stupendous proportion of the US media. And to hear Pete Hegseth say, your suggestion that we are losing this war is ludicrous, and I can't wait until Dave Ellison controls CNN so we don't have to listen to this nonsense anymore. It's so overt. It is pure textbook fascism. And what do fascists do? They invade other countries to try and prove their supremacy. And how does that end? It ends in genocide. How many times do we need to repeat this history? And that the only little tiny silver lining here is that I think that people who may have naturally been more aligned with that worldview in the past are starting to see how it plays out in real time. And that is why the right are fracturing, because not everyone on the right is a genocidal, warmongering maniac. There are some people who thought they could support this because they liked, I don't know, socially conservative values or the idea of lower taxes, who are realizing, no, this is going to cost you, unless you're a defense contractor, in which case you're laughing, or you're an oil supplier and you're benefiting from the inevitable spike in oil prices. It's going to cost you. It's costing farmers who can't get their fertilizer. And we should also mention the catastrophe that's waiting on the African continent, because African farmers are so dependent on fertilizers that come from the Gulf. And these are being held up in the Straits of Hormuz. The closure of global shipping because of this war is going to be catastrophic for ordinary people across the African continent who have nothing to do with this, never voted for it, who are quietly been abiding by the rules, and so have their governments, by the way. And, these rogue actors are going to cause misery for millions. It's only the beginning, and just can't emphasize that enough. This is not harmless and it's not confined. This is a globalized reality that is as literally limitless in its implications.
It's coming to all our doorsteps. And going back to something you said earlier, and I think it needs to be said, you and I are Black folk, and we have a lot more vulnerabilities as activists than a lot of other folks. And when Israeli and some Iranian diaspora people come into our DMs or are friends of us, and they say, "Where were you?" I had a conversation with someone I know quite well. And I was like, where the hell were you when being a voice for anti-racism, when Black women are dying trying to give birth, right? When sickle cell units in hospitals are being closed down, when boys are being gunned down on the streets, when the prison industrial complex is full of people that look like me and you. Because I'm looking at your feed and I've scrolled. I'm petty. I've looked at. I'm petty as hell. And I haven't seen shit. Okay, and I wanted, I said this in another Substack live I did the other day. I'll repeat it. When I was at the Women's March on Saturday, I had some of these pro Pahlavi folks and pro Bibi call me a N-word monkey to my face. And yes, that doesn't represent everyone in Iranian diaspora, but it really hit home, to me. We're out there doing the work, and do do we have a multi-billion-dollar media business like the State of Israel that has so much influence over literally newspapers of record in the UK? No, but we do what we can with the tools that we have. And I really, it's just so important now. When people come in, I'm like, where the hell have you been? I'm looking at your bulge.
I think, it's worth singling out Iran as well. There are some very weird white supremacist aligned, Zionist aligned, pro-Aryan racial theory, anti-Arab, anti-Black voices in the Iranian diaspora. Not by any means dominant voices in the diaspora. And that's actually one of the issues, that they have a disproportionate
They're loud.
impact. They're loud. They make noise, and they're visible, they're audible. And, I think it's been heartening to see other voices in the Iranian diaspora actually call that out from within.
They've been called out. They have been.
And, it's something that I've always noticed and not felt confident in challenging, because I know it doesn't represent a majority of the diaspora. And, it's hard from outside a community to start getting involved in the politics of who has legitimacy in that community. And it reminds me a little bit of what happened with East African Asians. And, there was a lot of anti-Blackness. There still is a lot of anti-Blackness in that community. But the best work on navigating that, articulating, calling out, came from within that community, from East African Asians explaining what they grew up with, how they've seen that narrative take hold in their own families and their own friendship groups, and really calling it out. So that's been happening. And I think that's healthy. But, I think because we are not educated in the US or in Europe about, with any level of sophistication or nuance whatsoever, about societies, ancient societies like Iran, most people don't understand. People I've spoken to didn't even realize that Iranians weren't Arabs. This is the level, the miseducation. So how are people meant to make informed choices when they vote about policy towards Iran if they don't understand Iran and its history and its complex society? And then they read the press, and all they read about are the mullahs, which is just the most basic stereotyping, flattening of a complex society. So anyway, but you don't need, though, to understand the nuance and complexity of Iranian society to see that this war is illegal, murderous, and completely wrong on every level. Even if you just take national self-interest of the countries involved, it is such a bad idea. I just wanted, before we kind of finish talking about that, talk about the adjacent subject of Dubai and the UAE, because I think there have been some interesting, like, cultural and economic conversations around that. One of the things I think is interesting, and we all know people, I mean, you and I both know people who live in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, for example. Actually, lots of Africans, lots of middle class and professional Africans live there. There's actually been a lot of investment coming out of UAE and Qatar and Saudi into African art, fashion, for example, a huge expansion of the kind of cultural project there. And so, it'd be wrong to simplify what's going on in those states. But a lot of the British expats who live in Dubai, frankly, live there to avoid paying income tax, right? There's 0% income tax. So one of the conversations I've been hearing is about whether they should get British taxpayer consular and military assistance, seeing as they live there specifically not to contribute to those services. And I think it's an interesting conversation and one that goes to the heart of the way we pay tax and the way we try to avoid it. So I'm just curious whether you have any thoughts about that, Miss Anne.
I saw it. Who raised it? Somebody raised it, and they were immediately shut down, saying that let's we're at war, and this is a thing to. I think they're talking about what's her name, the Isabel Oakeshott, right?
Terrible person.
And it was immediately shut down. That's all I've seen, which tells me that powerful people don't really want this.
She's like the perfect meme because she's basically a racist xenophobe and Islamophobe who's moved to a predominantly Muslim society because she said free speech in the UK was dead, to a society where you can now get arrested for posting images of drones hitting, because she doesn't want to pay tax, even though she's now at the mercy of the services we pay for as UK taxpayers, posting about the consular assistance she needs and the evacuation effort she wants. And it's just, you just couldn't make it up. You really couldn't make it up. And not everyone in Dubai, by any stretch of the imagination, is as awful as this person. But there is a strain of the person who's gone to Dubai, who's kind of gone there complaining about multiculturalism and diversity and immigration in the UK. And my mind has always boggled to try and understand why, if you hate Muslims so much, you would move to Dubai. Like, how does that make sense?
Well, Tommy Robinson was welcome there. I would say a lot of incel culture, the Andrew Tates of this world, seem to all be in Dubai. A lot of those bros with the Lambos and the fitness, the science, the fitness scams are all posting from Dubai. And I've just watched Louis Theroux's documentary on the
I haven't watched it, the Manosphere one. Are you because Miss Anne, I never know with you. Now that I know about your curling thing, I'm just not going to assume anything about your sport preferences. So are you like MMA adjacent? Do you follow like these weird manosphere combat? Sorry, and I shouldn't call them weird. I'm sure there are some lovely people watching who really like these sports, and I don't mean to minimize them. I'm on the outside of this world, but there seems to be a lot of MMA, cage fighting, boxing type stuff that happens in the UAE, which I didn't realize until quite recently. Like, are you in that world?
No, I mean, I just saw that they found one of the most wanted cocaine smugglers in the world at an MMA fight using AI facial recognition, and guess where he was living? Dubai.
Wow.
It's interesting who is being allowed into this place, and many of them are Islamophobic people, and actually many of them are also anti-Semitic, because if you watch this Louis Theroux documentary, which I found very moving in many ways and deeply disturbing, I was not shocked by the rampant misogyny and violence, potential violence. I wasn't shocked by the origin stories of these, I call them broken boys and men's bodies, but I was really shocked by the anti-Semitism. And in the age where people are being called out for anti-Semitism when they're saying, no, I just want you to stop bombing babies, actual anti-Semitism by these, and if you are working for organizations to fight anti-Semitism, I really suggest you put your resources into the manosphere, because one of these boys who blames the Jews, they say it like, is, oh, the Jews own this, the Jews, they reach hundreds of millions of people.
Wow.
And the pro-Israel corner of X should maybe look here rather than rabbis and grannies that are being arrested because they want babies to stop being bombed. The stuff I saw, there was a segment where little boys, which is young boys, were saying, "Yeah, oh well, the Jews do that. The Jews own that." I was like really, like, and they have been already programmed, age 14, 15, to have that
Wow.
point of view. It's the same real anti-Semitism that is what neo-fascists, neo-Nazis have. You know, you remember that video from the Jews will not replace us,
Mm,
from years ago in America. Where was it? It has that, and that's
mm,
scary and could lead to genuine violence at scale, especially as these boys become men. So,
mm,
again, as an anti-racist,
mm.
my spider tingly, I was like, oh, this is a problem.
I
This
mean,
is
it's no surprise because hate follows hate, So people who are being conditioned to hate women, to resent diversity and multiculturalism, of course, they find bogeymen, they play on these like
yeah.
centuries long tropes. They want to go back to a time when they imagined they had
Mhm.
power and access to the things they want. But still, why do they want to go to Dubai? That's my question, Misan.
Because it's a blind eye in many ways. Must be, the cocaine smugglers are there. So many, I mean, so many of these. The videos of the guy with the that's all tattooed up and he's all tanned and muscled up with his Lambo. It's not from London. It's in Dubai, so they're being welcomed there. And I
It's,
don't
I
think.
guess it's a place where it's a kind of blank slate to create this luxury influencer lifestyle, right? And you can afford it because you don't pay tax. And you remember
Mhm.
that video that went totally viral last year? It was like this, I think he's like a life coach or a trainer, and he was like my day, and it was like he kind of dunks his face in a bowl
Oh,
of
him,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
freezing mineral water every 10 minutes. And he gets up at 4 and journals. God knows what
Mhm.
he's journaling about because he looks like he's got like 2 brain cells. And then he dives into this pool and then he dunks his face in the ice. And it
Mm.
went so viral because it sparked this question like, what's going on with men? Is this seriously what they're
Yeah.
doing in the mornings? But that was very Dubai. You need like the condo with the panoramic view and the
Mhm.
pool and the staff and the kind of blue sky to make that look aesthetic on
Mhm.
social media. So maybe it's Instagram's fault. I don't know.
Yeah. And it's the aspiration, right? Boys want the watch and the car, and they're being told, that to dominate women, and I mean, it's really, really sad, and we all need. Also, I think social media needs to be regulated, because to have someone that's saying these things, um, not be banned from every single social media platform is really dangerous. We've all seen adolescents. Well, this is it at a global scale, and obviously their chief hustler is Andrew Tate, who has still somehow, not ended up behind bars, and is very much accepted. Once again, he's living in Dubai, from what I can see.
I mean, it's not funny and it's not laughing matter, but there were some quite funny posts when he did this post on Instagram of him like dancing while the drones rain down on Dubai, saying anyone who's a real man would never leave because of the war. And people were posting, Iran, just do this one thing. Just
Oh,
this one thing.
well, didn't he say the week before that the real men don't read or something? I mean, I'm just like fucking,
Yeah.
I'm just done with this
Um,
idiocy.
Do you think, though, this will have a lasting impact on the UAE bubble? Because apart from the Instagram influencer ready lifestyle was also the key question of safety and security. It
Mm,
marketed itself as this safe haven in the Middle East, a perfect place in a rough neighborhood. And it wasn't a perfect place on any level. I mean, look at the slave labor that went into building it, the
mm,
complete inequity, the way that still so many low income immigrants from South Asia, for example, are living in terrible conditions
mm,
servicing these luxury influencers. It's just really dystopian. But still, the idea that it's not safe, that it could be that easily violated by nearby conflicts, has the potential to just completely burst the bubble. And I'm really curious whether you think that will happen. I mean, I've got friends who invest in property in Dubai who are
mm,
completely freaked because property has been spiraling upwards and they've been
mm.
making a ton of money. And now everybody is spooked. And, that could wipe zeros off these property developers. Also, confusingly, Trump, who has been investing heavily in real estate in the Emirates. I don't know if he thought that through
So
before
he's
he
shocked.
went and smashed it.
Iran. No one expected. Even Trump didn't expect Iran to do it in this way. And I think memories. are short, and news cycles can be very short. So if the war stopped tomorrow morning, I think the Emirates, the GCC, Dubai will recover, and people will get on with it. But if this thing continues for the next 6 months, and Iran is sending drones, like I said this morning, into Dubai airport, and all flights are stopped. If that happens for 6 months, I think it's over as a place for people to think it's a safe place, because it just clearly has proven that they don't have the defenses. This is the other thing. A lot of the defenses that were promised to a lot of these GCC countries are being sent to Israel, right? To defend the barrage of missiles coming into Tel Aviv. So if this continues for the next 6 months, how can anyone see Dubai as the safe place that it is marketed itself to be? So it's a game of brinkmanship, and to see, and I think Iran is here. They're not about to just lay down arms for anyone. So I think time will tell.
Okay, Misan, we can't not talk about this because it's kind of become a staple for us. So we are speaking the day after the Oscars.
Told you so.
I really hate it when you're right. I know you're not going to spare me any of that smugness. So if you weren't watching, a few months ago, Misan and I bonded over our mutual disdain for One Battle After Another, hated it. And the difference, though, where we differed, so we both hated it, mainly similar reasons. Maybe we've got a few different reasons. But where we disagreed was that I was like, nobody is going to take this film seriously. It's so bad and stupid. Whereas Miss Anne was like, it's going to win everything. And I was like, no, Miss Anne, you're like, the Academy is not that basic. Oh, that aged well. My optimism has not served me on this occasion at all.
No, and look, PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. I think technically, the cinematography, the sound design is all the best of the best. But the gaze of that film, and if you know even one black woman, is so harmful. And I don't want to rehash everything we've already discussed, but a lot more people are saying what we said quite early on.
Yeah, but now the debate around it's annoying me even more because Paul Thomas Anderson actually got up and kind of performatively addressed the critique when he won the Oscar. And it wasn't the critique at all. He was basically addressing the allegation that he depicted a messy black woman. Nobody's mad you depicted a messy black woman. Of course, black women are messy. They can be flawed. They can be non-maternal. They can run away from things and responsibilities. My beef is that you appropriated the aesthetic and identity of a struggle that is real, that people are still giving their lives for. People are still being persecuted for. Assata Shakur died still at the top of the most wanted list. She lived until the end of her days in hiding because America was hunting her for wanting freedom for Black people. That is real. You had the audacity to appropriate that story for a piece of completely shallow entertainment, had no substance, no complexity, didn't even have any interiority. It was just a meme. It was just cinematography. It was just entertainment. And now you have the audacity to tell us that this is like the best film. I'm not censoring creativity. If people want to go and make trash films that appropriate things and turn them into like mass entertainment, not my problem. But when you try and tell me that that's important, that it's saying something about Black struggle or interracial relationships or, now, and this is an industry as well that is notoriously fails year after year on diversity. So now suddenly it's like, we've got a film that depicts Black people. It's a joke. And I'm so jaded by the idea that serious people who I know and respect even are taking this film seriously. That's what's getting to me. And it's like everybody's been
Taking it
duped.
seriously. There are people in my, people I've known for years, work colleagues, that say it's their favorite film of the year. And I'm like, it tells me so much about how they see the Black, or how they don't see the black experience. And the other thing is, who gets to tell our stories? You know, how many black filmmakers, and there are many of huge talent, would be given? I've just Googled. So the budget for this film, which is about black revolutionary women,
I mean, it's
was,
not, but
was
let's
yeah,
just, for the sake
yeah,
of
which for
saying
marketing's
it
sake,
is.
yeah, was 130 to 175 million dollars. Now, who there is no, I mean, brother Ryan Coogler is probably the only one that could pull that off, and I doubt they even give him the money if he decided to do it on this subject, because you know he would go in a way that they wouldn't probably want. And I actually a little bit relieved, because after the BAFTAs, I had a couple of nightmare nights where I thought they're going to do Sinners really dirty. I actually thought they're going to give Sinners one or no Oscars, you know. So I woke up in the morning and I was like, oh God, Michael B. won, Ryan won for writer. He didn't win for director. We've still never had a best black director ever. Right? Autumn won for cinematography, first woman of any color, but it's amazing for it to be a woman of color to win that in cinematography. And Sorensen won for music, which he wins every year because he's our generation's John Williams.
And he deserved it. Shabir Ahmed said he hated One Battle After Another like us, but can we talk about Sinners? And you're right, like we should celebrate the wins. And it was, I mean, if Sinners hadn't got some recognition, I would have been literally rioting at this point. But I want to take a moment to celebrate that. You know how much I love this movie, how much I love Ryan Coogler. I think he's a genius. He should have won Best Director. And I saw a post today of Michael B. Jordan sitting beside 11-year-old Michael B. Jordan as he was as Wallace in The White. It nearly made me cry, because that man has been working his whole life, honing his craft. His work ethic, his grace and generosity is just immense. And we both spent time with him last
Good
year, and
people. Good people.
it's real, and it's so beautiful to see someone who found fame as a child, wasn't corrupted, kept the love for the craft, kept it real, is still curious and still growing, and is willing to be vulnerable, and is willing to be in community with younger hymns and support them. It's all good. So that was really beautiful. And Wunmi Mosaku, who I just, I don't have enough words for the divinity of this woman. She is, and I've been saying this for years about her. She was underrated for years. She's not underrated anymore. So, that's all good. That's all joy. I'm not saying that Sinners had to win everything, although I think it should have won more. I just find it so crazy that on the same night we can recognize film like Sinners and then also reward a film like One Battle After Another. It's like, how is this happening in the same contest?
Yeah.
It's
Best film.
so
The biggest
weird.
prize of the night went. Best film was a film that I think does serious damage to black women.
And what about the interracial relationship of it all? Because you're in an interracial relationship, Misan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the product of an interracial relationship.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people felt like, well, I've seen both. I've seen people who appreciated its depiction of an interracial relationship. I've seen some of the most, I think, searing critique of it from the perspective of how it treats interracial relationships. Paul Thomas Anderson is in an interracial relationship himself.
Which relation? There's no interracial relationship in that film.
Well, that's exactly
there's I mean, what? There's nothing like anything close to relationship in that film.
Is the critique. And the family of it all, white man raising a mixed race daughter. I mean, I just struggle to
She was raising him.
I struggle to enter that debate for these it doesn't strike me. And in the film's defense, I didn't watch it as even trying to say something meaningful about that. I didn't find it trying to say anything meaningful about anything. One of many reasons why I don't understand why people liked it so much. But yeah, I was just curious if you had a view.
There's, I mean, on that aspect, that does not exist in the script. Are you kidding me? There's nothing. I mean, it is shallow waters there, and I'm not going to pretend anything otherwise. I really do think though that going back to who tells our stories, We don't get these chances, right? And when films are made about any aspect of the Black revolutionary movement, it needs to be done with care. It needs to really, the responsibility of it is massive. And I genuinely think, and we had a similar situation with Osage County with Marty Scorsese, another legendary director. But you the First Nation folks who were involved in that film, I can tell you firsthand, because I know some of them were deeply disappointed, because it centered Leonardo DiCaprio's character, and if you were someone that didn't read the book, you could watch that film and think Leo, his character was called Ernest Burkhart, I think. Leo's character was just a dumb sort of white trash idiot, when he's actually a serial fucking killer in that film.
I mean,
And
I don't completely agree with you. I do agree with you, but I have a little more time for half oh my god, I've just
Killers
gone
of the
blank.
Flower Moon.
Sorry, Killers of the Flower Moon. I can't believe I forgot the names. I've also read the book. I was just like slightly seduced by the white malice of it all. It is also and yes, it's centering white characters, which I would prefer to experience that story through an Osage lens, rather than that be the kind of supporting story. And I thought that Lily Gladstone she's an incredible actor. She has so much range, and she basically only got to play somebody who's being abused and then drugged
They
and
put her on a
dying in that
bed.
film.
It's a
Yeah,
3 hour film.
she was in bed failing for
Yeah. And
almost
her
all of the film.
sisters were amazing in it. I
They
just
were
want
amazing. And I wanted to be with them. I wanted to be with them. That was the story that I wanted to see. But I thought that there is a story about the white actors in that true historical story. And that is a story that has many lessons. And the thing that I liked about the film was that I felt like it didn't shy away from showing the level of nefarious and deeply sinister, just criminality of these people whose legacy still lives on. And so if anyone hasn't watched the film, they basically targeted the Osage, who had the title to these oil rights, which if white America had its way, they would never have had those rights in the first place.
No.
But through Osage ingenuity, they managed to keep control of the oil on the land they were forced into. And so then white people came and tried to marry into their families, kill them, and take the rights that way. And it's just...
They genocided. It was a genocide.
One of the darkest chapters in America, which is already one of the darkest histories. And it's kind of the intimacy of it, and there's the macro story of white settlers coming to America and genociding the natives. And then there's this intimate story of them marrying native families and killing everyone in them. Yeah. It's just so completely sick. But, I thought that film landed that. You felt the evil of that story.
Oh, you did that aspect. I think it's a much stronger film than One Battle, and Robert De Niro is basically playing the devil in it, and he's pretty terrifying. But again, it's just a really interesting observation of walking in other people's shoes, because I remember when I found it. It's only 1 minute long, and I'm going to play it. But this his name is Christopher Coate, and he was a language consultant. And this is him on the red carpet. Can you imagine? He's been paid. He's been paid. So most people that have been paid are very quiet. But he was so disturbed by this film.
Wow.
He said this live. Let's see.
Release of the film. Now that I've seen it, I have some strong opinions. As an Osage, I really wanted this to be from the perspective of Molly and what her family experienced. Well, I think it would take an Osage to do that. Martin Scorsese not being Osage, I think he did a great job representing our people. But this movie is being told, this history is being told almost from the perspective of Ernest Burkhart. And they kind of give him this conscience, and they kind of depict that there's love. But when somebody conspires to murder your entire family, that's not love. That's not love. That's just beyond abuse.
So that's on the red carpet.
Yeah. And I mean, who can argue with that? And this is my critique. 2 years after that film, Has it increased opportunities and access to finance for Native American filmmakers to tell their own story? 2 years after one battle after another, will it be any easier for an actual Black revolutionary to tell her own story? Like, we all know the answer to that question. And that's what is so enraging about this. It's like this circus continues. The same white dudes who make these films get rewarded and they rack up Oscars. They get even bigger budgets for the next project, whatever the hell their fancy takes them next. And the people who literally live and breathe these stories, which, by the way, just taking it as entertainment, are the most compelling, dramatic, like, stories that you couldn't imagine. And this is the thing, like, so there's a reason why they want these stories, because they are the stories. These are stories that you couldn't make up, and they happen to us and people like us, and they tell them, and then they get rewarded for telling them, and then they get access to more opportunities to tell them.
Guess how much the budget for Killers of the Flower Moon was?
Oh yeah, I mean,
$215 million. So if you get one battle after another in that, you're nearing 300. Two white men were given 350 million circa to tell stories of a people who they certainly do not have a lived experience of. And it's a once in a generation time probably to tell those stories. And they were told by the people who did what they did to it. And it's just, I think Hollywood is probably never going to change in that sense. And that's why independent cinema is so important. I think some of the best films I've seen this year were made by Palestinians for next to no money. And, huge demand to see all three, Palestine 36, The Voice of Hind Rajab, and All That's Left Is You, because people want to see those stories. And that's only going in one direction. There's some extraordinary Brazilian films, Iranian films, Nigeria. My Father Shadu, for God's sake. No, but come on now.
That's where it is. But
our stories need to be told.
We need independent film, and if a kind of side effect of this is that more people turn to independent film for that authenticity, that's a good thing. But I'm still not okay with a world in which Black and brown filmmakers struggle, because it is a struggle. We both know this world, struggle to raise the financing on a modest or low budget to do justice to their stories and do an incredible job against all the odds. That's why these films are some of the most in-demand films. But I'm not okay with a world in which they have the punitive experience of having to do that on the hardest terms, while meanwhile, the Paul Thomas Andersons and the Leonardo DiCaprios literally like make it rain to do whatever they feel like. And then guess what they feel like? They feel like doing our stories because they're good stories. And so, it's just, it's a film apartheid. It's actually crazy. And then as a viewer, all you know is that you're seeing these stories, but you don't know who wrote them or who made them. Even if you take The Woman King, written by white women, Misan, it's always the same. And I'm not saying that white people can't write these stories. What I'm saying is I don't want to be in an industry where they have a monopoly on telling our stories. And if you're a Black filmmaker, you can't do it unless you put a white person in front of it. What craziness is that in 2026?
Well, it's so funny. We've had this discussion so many times, and it go. Luckily, technology. You and I are doing this conversation on Substack, which is democratizing. It's just one of many apps and many ways that we're going to find a way to we're going to have to find ways to do the thing. And I look at Akinola Davis and Wale; they're going to make great films, right? It's going to be a struggle for everyone. Because of everything that you've said, but we're going to have to find a way.
We're making great films, Miss Anne. Like, I don't want to be all negative. We're doing the things. We will overcome the adversity, and we will also pay it forward and try and create opportunities for younger users and other people from our backgrounds who face these barriers to be able to make these films. And, the thing is, when we get in, we're committed to making sure others get in. I don't know, maybe Paul Thomas Anderson is quietly supporting young Black women filmmakers all over the place. I don't know. I would like to think to. Maybe Leo is. I don't know. I'd like to think so, but I know that we are, and not just me and you, Miss Anne, but like other people like us, other Black and brown filmmakers, the ones that I know. It's not even a conversation. You do that work because it's part of who you are and it's part of your mission. So, we'll see. But I don't see that work or that mission being distributed equally at all. And you know what? The Academy is becoming increasingly irrelevant. So I am really happy that Sinners was recognized. I really do think that's important. Those guys deserve their flowers. They deserve their moment of recognition. And I don't want to downplay it at all. But I also think that people are voting with their feet. And, I was listening to the efforts the Academy was undertaking this year to try and get young people to watch the Oscars. I know that in a couple of years, they're going to put it on YouTube because basically their audience is dying. It's people of a certain age. I mean, I do know people my age who watch the Oscars religiously. Well, I'm old too. Like people younger than us are not sitting down to watch the full Oscars ceremony, and actually increasingly when you're younger than that don't even care. It's not what makes them watch a film is whether it's being recognized by that insanely out of touch system. So I think it is important to have a system that recognizes and rewards creativity and art, and great storytelling. I think there's a role for that, but I'm not sure the Oscars is it.
No, and the dissemination. I mean, I think you look at audio and podcasts and news, and I keep bringing Mehdi up, but look at what he's built with Zeteo, right? I look at Owen Jones and what he's pretty much doing by himself. I look at Dropsite News, what they're doing, and if
led by donkeys. Amazing.
I mean, you Double Down News. There's and people are really. I mean, the traffic in all of the named folks that we just said, it's not going down, right? It's not going down for a reason. And I do wonder whether, I don't know if you're a commissioner at Channel 4 or the BBC and you see this, do you think, oh my God, there's a real opportunity, how do we bring them in? Or do you think head down, find something else that we can commission that is near enough? Because change is knocking at the door and it isn't just podcasts or radio or how news is being consumed by people. It's also in the fact like My Father's Shadow can be made and shot in Nigeria and get the recognition it deserves. It's the fact that, the documentary I made with Andy Mundy Castle, it was made. Right? It's very, very interesting. Like we all say, who gets to tell our stories? Would I like you and I to have our phones ringing off the hook from the wall of money from the BBC and others? A lot of especially Black folk that look up to you and I, they're like, what? They're not calling you guys? I'm like, now. They go, but you guys have made it. I said, it's not about making it. It's about the voices that are amplified. Like, it's really, Clive Murray, I bring him up again. You're not going to get Afua Hirsch sat saying that Iran is being, what was it, rescued or something? You're not going to do that. Transformed. You are not going to be doing that. So they're not, it's just the way things are. And that's okay. But I think it takes a while for people to recognize how the systems in place in media work.
Kimmy MPA says, if the Oscars is so, I think she meant to say, if the Oscars is so irrelevant, why are we so angry about this American cinema award system? I think that, I'm saying that the way that it's detaching itself from authenticity is making it irrelevant. But at the moment, it is still the preeminent system by which film gets rewarded. And it has serious consequences because if you win an Oscar, you get access to bigger budgets, you get open doors from commissioners, although shockingly, Black filmmakers and actors have said time and time again that actually the way they thought their lives would change, even after winning an Oscar, which is the most you can basically be asked to do, it still was a struggle. And it's one of those things that you think that that's the finish line, and then you get there and you realize there's another finish line and another.
Yeah.
But in
Oscar
the
nominee here, I can I can tell you that
You speak, Misan. Only one person in this chat has actually had an Oscar nomination. So I give you the floor and the red carpet, Misan.
Well, to be fair, I've had so many extraordinary offers and opportunities even after being nominated. I think with me, it's been more of a choice on the stories that I want to tell rather than the stories that are offered to me. I also would say, and this is a really important point about Black women, it breaks my heart to see them go back to zero even after being nominated. And they won't be getting straight offers. They'll be part of a casting process. I have so many Black women actors that have either been nominated for an Emmy or an Oscar or what, and they struggle, quite immediately afterwards because the roles
aren't there.
The roles aren't there. So it's particularly
Because
tough
the
on Black
white
women.
men who keep winning Oscars also aren't writing or creating interesting, complex roles for Black women. That is real. And, that's another thing about when a Black writer or director is nominated or wins, it means that they are now getting a bigger platform to create the roles they want to create. And no one should tell them what roles to create. But I guarantee they will be creating roles that tell a more nuanced story about Black women than the industry has done before. So, it is what it is. We move. Congratulations on your Oscar nomination.
I beg.
And,
that one is grammar.
We don't want the Oscars to become completely irrelevant until both of us have won one. So I'll just end on that. And it's been a joy and a pleasure speaking to you, Misan. Always.
But before we go, Afua, I know
energized.
When I got nominated, I had a Zoom with some very powerful people in Hollywood. And they're like, "Oh my God, Misan, you got a real chance of winning. Is between you and Wes Anderson." I don't know if I said this publicly before. Well, so here goes. It's between you and Wes Anderson. And I was just, and I was like, great. And they said, but there's just one, there's one little issue. And remember, my nomination was after October 23, right? My nomination was 24. And this very powerful person in Hollywood looked me through the Zoom and said, "Your social media." I was like, "What's up with my social media?" And they said, "It's a little Araby." I said, "Eh?" They said, "Yeah, it's just a little Araby."
They actually said that out loud.
Mm-hmm. And I said, before I decline your services, that there is no trinket on this planet that I would ever reduce my voice for. Just letting you know. And they pushed back, were saying, "We just want you to have the best chance of winning."
So thoughtful, so considerate, always got your best interests at heart, always thinking of others. You couldn't make up. Like I said, we have good stories.
Yes.
So, we'll be telling them.
Yes.
Misan, thanks, bro.
Always a pleasure. We'll be back later.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Bye.
Bye.